Matt, you got some props?
I'll get them.
Yeah.
PrizePicks too.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
What are we live? Oh yeah. We're good. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Live Before Lock show. COVID throwing a wrench into the works of a lot of stuff these past couple of days. So we don't have one game. We're not talking Showdown. We're talking a 2-game slate, 2 less than stellar contests. But what does that matter when it comes to DFS? I'm Dave Lockran at Lafayette_D. Hit your boy up on Twitter if you haven't done so yet, and say hello to Matt Savoca at Draftaholic, joining me once again, 4:00 live before lock show on a Monday night. Matt, couldn't get any weirder.
Yeah, I feel strange getting into it at this time, but I'm excited. There are still some decent players on this slate, despite tons of absences of some superstars here. But thrilled to dig into it with you. Let's get going.
Well, we're happy to have you guys with us. As always, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Almost at 69,000 subscribers. That'll get Alex Baker very happy. Make him even happier to get to that 69,420, which he's been clamoring over for the past couple of weeks. But yeah, in all seriousness, it helps us a ton. Only takes a second. So if you like this content, you want to see more of it, and you want to help support us, it's the easiest way to do so. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe. And if you want to join down below, you'll see that join right down below the thumbs up, which you certainly just hit. Well, get you free super chat each month, the custom emojis, the badges that improve over time. We'll always prioritize your questions along with all of our people in premium Discord. And of course, get that custom shout out as well. Matt, how you feeling today, man?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. Feeling like we got a lot of days of football ahead of us, which is never bad, even if the games are so-so in terms of matchups.
I feel like shit today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh at you either, just the transition.
Oh, no, it's good, man. I told Mike Lawrence during today's earlier show, I was like, I'm not going to mention anything, and I'll just get through this. Almost didn't make it through the show. The only reason I did was to spare myself the embarrassment of being like, well, sorry, guys, I'll see you later.
That would have been a story for the ages.
Yeah, got to be honest around here, right? You know what I mean?
Authenticity takes you a long way, but I'm not sure if that's what they mean.
I think it is, man. I think people appreciate sincerity. Everyone gets it. I don't know. Whatever. I'm okay. Maybe it's too much drinking. It's not. It's not. I haven't drank in hours. But no, I haven't drank in days. Anyway, 2 games to talk about. I love, by the way, let me just say, I love that it's a 4 p.m. slate and we got people. No, John, no COVID. It's no COVID. Nah, it's not it. Just a general feeling of malaise and my stomach telling me it hates me for God knows what reason. But no COVID. I got the antibodies, bro. We're good. But in all seriousness, Matt, what I was getting at here is when you look at a slate like this, 5 p.m. lock, not really great games. We still got people coming in here to hang out with us at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Monday. You can't beat that.
That is awesome. Thank you guys, as always, for being here. But also, isn't 4 p.m. a Monday just the right time where if you're sitting at a desk, maybe watching that clock, it's going a little slow. Maybe we're actually at a pretty good time for some people, especially on the East Coast, who are trying to make those last few hours on the clock go by a little faster.
Yeah, I think so. Looking forward to talking about it. Yeah, Eric, headed to the locker. You're right. I almost pulled a Lamar Jackson.
Lamar, yeah.
All right. Mike says at least Lavi finished the show unlike Anthony Davis. We try, man. We do the best we can around this way. All right, Matt, what do you say we dive into this, starting with the Vegas Raiders and the absolutely decimated Cleveland Browns?
What do you mean? Are there some absences for Cleveland that I should be aware
a couple, handful. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Huge.
let me make sure I have this.
A plethora.
I mean, this is nuts, dude. This is crazy. I mean, I'm glad that we've had most of this information for a few days, but ultimately this game gets postponed from Saturday to Monday, and a lot of the players that we were expecting to be out at that Saturday time are still out at Monday time. So, I mean, we can look at this game as a possible fantasy option, but I wonder if the easiest thing to do is just fade Las Vegas, Cleveland entirely. Didn't these two teams play to a 16-6 disgusting game last year that if you just avoided it entirely, it would have been a positive EV for you?
I think that was also a game that was in a monsoon.
Yeah, I know weather was a part of it, but we got backup. We got third string QBs here. This is
it's not good.
Similar.
It's not good. Nick Chubb is pretty good though. I don't know. Like, first of all, you can't fade it entirely because you're going to need more than one game in here, right? But at the same time, is it a game? So are you serious? Are you making the assertion that you will have some lineups where you're just going like not full out fade, but very underweight on this game in general? Because that Renfro price, he is arguably the most underpriced or egregiously priced player on this entire slate.
Yeah, you can go there. There are obvious players on the Raiders side of the ball, especially with Darren Waller out, where we can get guaranteed volume. And I'm never going to scoff at guaranteed volume in a two-game slate. You only got 4 teams to choose from, and Hunter Renfrow could easily have double-digit targets here. Josh Jacobs could easily have 20 opportunities here. Not going to scoff at that at all, but I just think the overall production from these two games could be drastically different. I think the ceiling for the Minnesota-Chicago game offensively is much, much higher than Las Vegas-Cleveland. Unless Nick Mullins just balls out or Nick Chubb does all the work himself. Very possible.
Yeah, and in our top stack tool, Cleveland's at 9.7% top stack probability. That is by far the lowest on this entire slate. I mean, it's not even close. You've got, I don't mind giving you guys some information on a 2-gamer. I try to anyway, whenever I can. We have some free tools. I actually think our Showdown top plays tool is free today, which is huge. So check that out. That's free on the site. You don't need a subscription or anything like that. What else is free? I'm pretty sure we have the tops. Yeah, this single game top plays tool, which is it's really one of the best tools we have. And if you need help understanding it, there's a key up top. You know, there's the description that'll help you understand why it's such a good tool. NBA player rankings, NHL player rankings, all that stuff is free. And with NFL kicking off this early, you can go straight from that into NBA or NHL, and then get in on some Showdown action for tonight's game, which Matt seems to like a whole lot more. But the top stacks tool, you have Cleveland at 9.7% top stack probability, then Chicago at 21%, Vegas at 30%, and Minnesota at 40%. So Cleveland is so far behind everyone else. It's not even close, Matt.
I don't see how you really look at them as anything but a super off the wall, large field tournament kind of play if you're stacking up the team. I mean, we have some okay values like Donovan Peoples-Jones. We have projected as the 5th best wide receiver, and he's the 6th best receiver in salary. I mean, that's technically a value. Rashard Higgins is okay. I think if you're, in the largest field tournaments, you can certainly do it, but otherwise, just stick with Nick Chubb, the studs on the Las Vegas side, and I think you can call it a day.
All right. I disagree, but that's what makes this show fun. So let's get into it. Kick it off with the Raiders side of the ball. Let me just point out too, the quarterbacks are rough. I mean, my favorite quarterback adjusted for price, and Matt Kajeski mentioned it this morning, Justin Fields, just with the rushing upside alone. It's not pretty, but you're paying significantly less than you are for somebody like Kirk Cousins, almost $1,000 less than you are for Carr. So we'll get into all of that. But what do you make of Derek Carr in this passing offense today, comprised of Hunter Renfrow, whose his reception rate is absurd, just truly insane. Guys catching 90% of targets every week. But then once you get past that, you have no Darren Waller. So you're looking at guys like Foster Moreau, who's going to play probably 100% of snaps. And then you have Deshaun Jackson, who's a speedster, can still rip off a 50, 60-yard touchdown. But aside from that, you might get blanked altogether. And then Zay Jones and Sir Wind Sprints Brian Edwards. It gets ugly down here, man. So, yeah, I think Derek Carr is fine. I love Hunter Renfrow. but the passing offense altogether for the Raiders, it's not very good.
No, it's not fantastic. You see Derek Carr in our top plays tool. He's got a 21.9% chance of being the optimal quarterback. That's 1/5 of the time. That's not zero, but that's the third best among the 4 possible quarterbacks. If you're playing one lineup, this is not a quarterback you need to get to. The receiving options, it's pretty simple, right? Hunter Renfrow has a 9 target average, 9.1 targets over his last 6 games. That's fantastic. That's something that you don't really see from most players in the NFL, over a 6-game span, averaging 9 targets. I guess you could say Foster Moreau is a value here just based on his projected snap share, as you mentioned, and the fact that when these slates get smaller, that's when I look at a player like Deshaun Jackson, who only needs a couple catches to break, be in the optimal lineup, most likely. But ultimately, as I've said before, whenever I look at this team, I see Renfrow as a value play, probably the number 1 wide receiver in terms of optimal lineup percentage on DraftKings for sure. And then kind of players I don't really need in the passing game.
So then where are you going for value on a slate like today if you're playing Chubb and Dalvin Cook in the same lineup?
I'm definitely going to players in the Minnesota-Chicago game. Like, I don't mind a KJ Osborne or a Tyler Conklin, especially if Adam Thielen is out, which I think he's going to be out at this point. I'm even fine going to the auxiliary weapons for Justin Fields. You mentioned that you kind of liked him. I kind of like Damiere Byrd, who's had a little bit more opportunity than Darnell Mooney over their last 4 games. And Jakeem Grant showed his playmaking ability last week with 2 touchdowns as well. So I'd rather kind of go there than start digging around the Bryan Edwardses of the world. And Renfro's an objectively strong play. I will give you that.
Yeah, Renfrow might be my favorite play. It sounds crazy, but he might be my favorite play on the slate, at least on DraftKings, given the pricing. Because if you're coming out, and we had a question earlier today asking during the strategy show, which was almost irrelevant by the time it was ended, because we got all the Cleveland news like 15 minutes after the show was done. That happened to me on Friday too. I remember I was doing it might've been the Thursday show with you where I talked about there being a couple Tuesday games or a Tuesday game, and chat was like, what are you talking about? And I was joking, but I said, I just assume that we're going to have Tuesday games, right? Just to kind of operate under the assumption that that's going to happen. And
this is your fault.
I know.
This is your fault.
I know.
You did this.
Squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, Matt. Ended up, it happened because I remember it happening last year. But the thing is too, you can't. So you have these 2 Tuesday games tomorrow. You have today's game. And I forgot where I was actually. What were we talking about? I completely lost my train of thought.
Oh, you were just saying that you called it that these games were going to eventually.
No, but I had a point. It wasn't just a brag. There was a point there. I don't know. I told you I
wasn't privy to.
Yeah, it wasn't. Apparently, it wasn't important. Oh yeah, I did a show with Neil Orfield on Friday for the Saturday show, and 30 minutes after that show concluded, the Cleveland game got pushed. But Hunter Renfrow on that slate would have been a 2-game Saturday slate because you had the Patriots and Indy. That slate had Renfrow at 7,300. So they dropped him down $800 for no real reason whatsoever. I guess you can make the argument that this slate is a little bit deeper at wide receiver, but outside of Jefferson, and if you operate under the assumption that Thielen's not going to play, it's really not deep at wide receiver at all.
No, it really isn't. And, when you got a player, I get that these numbers get a lot higher when you only have 4 teams on a slate, but I bet a lot of main slate only players are, very surprised to see a player like Renfrow in our top plays tool. He's in the optimal lineup 53% of the time. He has a coin flip chance of being in the optimal lineup. So clear value play there. And I think it has to do, the reason they moved his salary down is because of the overall the flex plays on this slate. You've got David Montgomery, you've got Dalvin Cook, the top end players. I guess he had Jonathan Taylor on the other side, but after that, it got pretty stark. So there is some differences overall from a macro perspective. I think that the only person, like if I'm going to a tournament and I'm specifically strategically fading Renfrow, I do think Foster Moreau makes some sense, even though our projections don't love him, because you got to assume that the short area targets that Renfrow theoretically doesn't get when you're fading him have to go somewhere. And I think that's most likely Foster Moreau compared to Zay Jones or Deshaun Jackson.
And he played 98% of snaps last week, 85% of snaps the week before that. He's going to at least be on the field. And that's more than you can say about a lot of these tight ends. One spot that I do, this is where I said I disagree a little bit. I'm not excited about any of these pass catchers, but I mean, I love 2-game NFL slates. My favorite slate, right? And I bet a lot of people in chat will agree with me on this because it's such a fun way to start the season. Showdowns are awesome. Obviously, main slates, Thanksgiving, all that stuff. But one of the most fun slates you're going to have every single year is the doubleheader Monday Night Football to kick off week 1, right? And they didn't do it this year.
They ditched it. That sucks. That was your favorite?
Oh, I love, how do you not love doubleheader Monday Night Football, man? It's great. I love 2-game NFL slates. I think there's ways to get different without being terribly stupid, right? Like you don't have, on these 2-game slates, Deshaun Jackson and Zay Jones become more than viable, but you don't have to go to a guy that's playing 2% of snaps either. You know, you don't have to go to those type of players. But a Deshaun Jackson, 1 reception for 50 yards and a touchdown ends up being a spot that can change the entire course of the slate for you. So I do like that. And Zay Jones has been getting some end zone targets, albeit few and far between, but he's super cheap. So he's coming off 5, 7, and 5 target games. He's 3,500. I think these guys are both in play today, even if it's projected to be a low scoring game, which it is, because we only have one other game to choose from.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I'm
not asking you to agree. I'm just telling you, I'm just giving you my perspective here, because outside of Renfrow, who the hell else is Carr throwing to?
I think he's dumping off to Josh Jacobs, to be honest. I think it just solidifies my liking of Josh Jacobs as both a rusher and a receiver. Remember, you got Kenyon Drake on IR. He's got a lot less competition than he had to start the season in the pass catching role. Zay Jones is a value if you look at, projection versus salary-based expectation. He's wide receiver 6 in our projections, wide receiver 9 in salary. So I get what you're saying. Looks better than Edwards and Jackson in our projections. I will say that.
Where do we have Bird and okay, Bird's getting. So, okay, all of these guys like Damiere Byrd, Deshaun Jackson, they're all pretty low owned. Is Zay Jones getting some love? They're all around that like 12 to 15% range. One of these guys ends up making a difference. They have to. Where's Jakeem Grant? 18%. Okay. So that's where most of those guys, those cheap guys are. I wasn't sure if there'd be a little recency bias coming in on Grant and Bird after that primetime game the other day.
Just a little bit, huh? Like I think it doesn't make a lot of sense for Grant to be getting more ownership at a higher salary. There is a little bit of recency bias, but not egregious.
All right, let's talk about the other side of this, and we can obviously touch on defenses. It's not something you want to spend a lot of time on, obviously, but yeah, Cleveland defense today, they are oddly, what are they, 2,800? Yeah, they're the same price basically as the Bears. I think if you want to get to Cleveland's defense, go for it. If you want to get to any defense, I'm not going to hold it against you on a 2-game slate, but let's kick it off with Nick Chubb. He's really the one guy here that stands out far and away ahead of everybody else. Kareem Hunt's out. I do still think Dearness Johnson plays a decent amount, and I have some interest in him, even though they jacked his price up a little bit after they moved him off Saturday. But you have to think that Nick Chubb is going to get a solid workload today. And one more thing, Matt, lest we forget that the NFC North right now is separated by what, half a game, because the Steelers are 7-6-1. I think every other team is 8-6.
Yeah, no, it's a super competitive division, the AFC North, and right now the Bengals are in first place. So, no, definitely the Browns are the best third place team in the NFL. Maybe the San Francisco 49ers have something to say about that.
I go 49ers, but then yeah, Browns.
Yeah, this situation for Nick Chubb is objectively pretty strong. I do like Nick Chubb. Usually I am kind of meh on a player like Chubb because he has to get there with efficiency, even though he often does that. Yeah, if you look on Odd Shopper right now and you look at some of our best bets, you're seeing the under 2.5 receptions for Nick Chubb as a positive ROI play. I'm not so sure I agree with that. We have him projected for 1.8. I think that's a little conservative when the only backup you have is D'Ernest Johnson. And no disrespect to D'Ernest Johnson, he did a pretty good job filling in when both Hunt and Chubb were down. But I think this is a situation where, especially when you got Nick Mullins starting, why in the world do you not give Nick Chubb the ball 25 times and then figure it out from there?
I've wondered that many times in the past. They have to do it. I don't know how you don't when you're fighting for positioning, you're fighting for a playoff spot, you're fighting to win because the division is still, and Alex talked about this on the deeper dive yesterday. Someone super chatted and said, how much do you factor in teams need to win? Teams need to win. And he said quite a bit. And I don't blame him, right? I don't disagree. Why would you not look at something like this, right? You don't really have the luxury of dropping a game here. So, okay, the Browns are 7-6. If they win, they're all top three are 8-6. I don't know what the tiebreakers are. And John Harbaugh just doesn't kick extra points anymore with Justin Tucker. He goes for 2 and loses back-to-back games on that. But yeah, the Browns have a real shot of being tied for first place. And what is the best way to do that when Nick Mullins is at quarterback? The best way to do that is to go to Nick Chubb, especially given that the Raiders' biggest weakness is their run defense, right? Their secondary is serviceable. Their pass rush has been good. Even though they don't blitz a lot, they still get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. What better way to mitigate that than to just run the ball with Nick Chubb? And I said it since the beginning of time. So if you, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, just, by the way, my God, that guy is second to none right now.
So awesome.
Where the defenders out. By the third quarter, these guys, I say this tongue in cheek, but they don't want to tackle you anymore. I mean, you just see them break them down, and that's when Nick Chubb gets those 50, 60-yard runs later in the game. If Nick Chubb gets anywhere close to 25 touches today, I can't imagine he's not in the optimal lineup.
Right. I mean, there's always a chance that you get 25 touches. The Raiders absolutely sell out. They say somebody beat us other than Nick Chubb.
Possible, yeah.
It's possible. It's possible, but you said it. He's one of the most elusive rushers in the league. Top 10 in juke rate, which is evaded tackles per touch. And considering the fact that he's had one of the highest touch shares in the league when he's active, that's pretty solid. And then his ability to turn a run into 10 yards, breakaway run rate, 7.2%. That's seventh best among all running backs. Nick Chubb is just doing Nick Chubb things when healthy this season. You know, he could get stuffed, but I see him as a really solid option. He's in the optimal lineup 50% of the time, but we have him as a negative leverage score. I get it. I just think the ownership's going to get super, super high here. So he's one of the easiest ways to be contrarian in this slate is to just not play Nick Chubb.
Yeah, or play him with D'Ernest Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely. The rules like 2 running backs or avoid 2 running backs from the same team, all that kind of stuff kind of goes out the window when you only have 4 teams to choose from, especially when you want to beat a lot of people.
Yeah, you can't. This is not a traditional slate at all, you know? Wow. All 4 of Chicago's starting defensive backs, Burns, Johnson, Jackson, and Gibson, are out tonight against the Vikings. Woo!
What did I tell you about that game? Focusing on that game.
Yeah, I'm with you. But again, this is where you and I kind of differ a little bit. And hit that thumbs up if you haven't. We have 1,550 people watching right now, 215 likes. The ratio, fellas, it's lacking. We could do so much better. But only takes one single solitary second to hit that thumbs up and make our days a little bit better. The difference for you and me, I think, is I look at Cleveland and I say, all right, not exactly the highest implied total today. Not really excited about them, as none of us should be excited about them, right? A 41.5 point total in this game. They're 3.5. They're 2.5 3-point dogs, depending on where you're looking. 19.5 point implied total for Cleveland. However, this is probably going to be an absurdly concentrated offense. So what if you get the right spots? I mean, I remember Nick Mullins started last year against the Eagles on Monday Night Football, and he targeted George Kittle. I believe it was 15 times. Now, I'm not saying David Njoku is George Kittle, so don't get it twisted there. But George Kittle had 13 receptions. No, where was it? It was 15. He caught all 15. That's right, for 183 yards and a touchdown. Well, Austin Hooper was not activated from the COVID-19 reserve list. And then you've got Harrison Bryant, who is expected to play today. He's active, so that would have made things even crazier. But with Hooper out, I think what if we get an 8-target game for David Njoku? What if you're getting short passes to David Njoku today, who's a pretty athletic tight end? What if you do lock in on a Donovan Peoples-Jones? Again, I'm not saying these guys are exciting, but with so many absences, with Landry out, with Kareem Hunt out, who can serve as a pretty premier pass catcher when he's active, with Austin Hooper out, maybe it just so happens that you lock onto a guy and you end up being right about that on a 2-game slate.
It's really not a bad thought. It really isn't. I definitely think that there's some merit to bumping up a tight end's projection when you have a backup quarterback in play. And I think obviously Mullins is targeting Kittle because of Kittle's overall talent, but we often see backup quarterbacks have a lower average depth of target, thus often going to running backs and tight ends. I will say that Harrison Bryant is still expected to play here. He's had about a 40% snap share over his last 4 games, about 7 targets compared to Njoku's 16. So he does take away the ceiling there, but at 2,900, Njoku is a clear value option if you want to go for this game. He's the optimal tight end 34% of the time. Really, one third of our sims have him as the optimal tight end. So with no clear tight end 1 available to you, clearly our simulations are often just saying, like, take the value with Njoku. So I get it.
What do you think about DPJ?
Kind of like him a little better, just because if he hits in a way like Deshaun Jackson hits, right? He's probably getting a deep touchdown, whereas Njoku's probably, how does he get there? With 2 end zone catches? I think there's more yards after the catch ability. Obviously, the salary is different. 2,900 versus 4,300 for Donovan Peoples-Jones is a really big difference on a 2-game slate. But we're still seeing him, DPJ, as the wide receiver 5 in terms of optimal lineup percentage at 29%. That's pretty solid. Again, I'm more focused on the auxiliary options from the other game, but he is a solid value compared to salary-based expectations.
What about Anthony Schwartz? Anybody else here in this offense that you might be taking shots on or just staying away from, Matt?
Yeah, this is where I'm staying away. This is where I'm staying. I don't need to. Yeah, Anthony Schwartz could theoretically get some, he's gotten some horizontal, like, gadget passes a little bit, but ultimately, I think he is a super, super low probability play. 1.9 expected fantasy points per game over the last 6 weeks for Schwartz.
Any defenses you like particularly above other defenses from this game?
The Raiders, if I have to, but again, it's one of those situations where, like, if I'm playing Chubb, of course the Browns defense is in play. If I'm playing Josh Jacobs, of course the Raiders defense is in play, and I don't even mind having one wide receiver going up against the defense. I think the Raiders defense probably makes the most sense. Mullins is a 3rd-string quarterback for a reason here, but it's okay. They're okay. Raiders a little better than the Browns.
Okay. So where is that comment? Nick says DPJ breaks the slate and pushes my best ball teams into the next round, baby. That would be good. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is similar to a Deshaun Jackson. It's just probably gets a little bit more opportunity with a less quality quarterback, but the Raiders offense has been terrible lately anyway. Outside of that Thanksgiving Day game against Dallas, they've been terrible. Go look at their offensive production over the last 7 weeks. It's putrid. So it's a bad game. I'm with you on that. I just think when we only have 2 games to choose from, I'll be sprinkling it in a decent amount. let's wrap this game with our favorite plays. I'll go first, Matt, with Nick Chubb. Obviously, I love Nick Chubb. I love Hunter Renfrow. I really have no issue. I'm really okay if they end up in most of my lineups today, both of them. I'm 100% on board with that. I like Deshaun Jackson and Zay Jones. Zay Jones a little bit more because the ownership is similar to Jackson and he's actually getting targeted. I don't have a problem with Foster Moreau. And then on the other side, David Njoku to me. I like David Njoku because Austin Hooper's out. It should open a little bit more up. If they do get red zone opportunities when Nick Chubb single-handedly gets them down there, I like that as well. So this is not a priority. Once you get past Chubb and once you get past Renfro, you're essentially saying what guys are viable that I can work into lineups. And I think Peoples-Jones and Schwartz and Higgins even all the way at the bottom are fine. It's just there's two priorities for me, and then there's peripheral guys.
I think I might add Josh Jacobs to the value list there with those big two.
That's a good one, yeah.
At the Hunter Renfrow, Nick Chubb level is not as strong of a talent as Chubb, but you could easily see Josh Jacobs getting a 75 to 85% snap share here and commanding 20 to 23, 24 total opportunities. He's had 9 targets and 6 targets his last 2 games. That's the best 2-game span of target share that he's had all season. That's a big deal here, especially if for some reason, like if Chubb hits on the other side and they're forced into comeback mode, you should see Derek Carr dumping it off to Josh Jacobs in a way he wasn't earlier in the year. And how unceremonious, like this just really shows you that passing yardage isn't that helpful all the time in terms of real football. Derek Carr, second in the NFL in passing yards this season. Who cares? That offense isn't great.
Wait, is he really?
He really is.
He's second. So he's what, behind Tom Brady?
I believe so. He's got 3,926 passing yards this season.
Well, that's nuts. How many touchdowns?
18. He's at a 3.6% touchdown rate.
Ew.
Not great, Bob.
No, that's horrible, as a matter of fact. Okay, that's insane. Yeah, Brady's number 1, and this was before yesterday. But you're right. How about that? He's got more passing yards than Stafford, Herbert, Mahomes. Woof. By the way, speaking of just devastation, I feel for all of you because I'm in the same boat that had killer best ball lineups with Tampa stacks yesterday, that had season longs with Brady and Godwin, who tore his ACL, is done for the year, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, who's now week to week. What an awful, awful game that was, not just from a viewer standpoint, because it was. If you would bet no touchdowns in that game, I think it was like plus 50,000 or something.
Are you serious?
It was something absurd. That might be, Aton was mentioning it earlier in the day, and I was just reading what he said, but it would have been, yeah, you think about it, astronomical odds. 50,000 sounds like a lot, but if you would bet no touchdowns, that's insane. But what an awful game. People have to be licking their wounds after that, or celebrating if you were on the other side. I faced off against Nolan in our fantasy league, and I lost Derrick Henry. I lost AJ Brown in the season. I lost Antonio Brown. I lost so many good players, but I felt for him too, because he had Godwin, Evans, and Fournette in the same lineup yesterday.
Oh, and he's probably been rolling all season with that trio.
Yeah, his name is Rolling with Nolan on there. Not anymore. Wow. Wheels fell off, big fella.
Oh, A plus there.
All right, let's talk about PrizePicks and then dive into Minnesota and Chicago. And if you guys have any questions, definitely hit us up in the chat. Happy to answer them. And thanks for getting us over that 300 likes. Appreciate you. It helps us a ton. Combat those YouTube overlords, right, Matt?
That's right. Gotta fight the robots best we can. We don't even know what the enemy looks like.
No, they're faceless, nameless, but we feed the algorithm the best we can around here. PrizePicks.com, App Store, Google Play, wherever you want to do it, you should definitely check it out. We had that insane offer earlier for a few months ago, not for PrizePicks, something else. But this might be better. This might be better because not only when you sign up for PrizePicks, which is daily prop-based contest, looks beautiful on the site too. Very nice user experience. Mike Lawrence, producing the show, just put it up there. It's sick. A million different sports. Hell, I saw Frisbee golf up there a couple of months ago. See cricket, if you want to stay up for 48 days straight to follow a match, football, basketball, hockey, MMA, all of that stuff, and a whole different menu of props for every single sport. You want to check this out. All you do is you build lineups with the over or the under. There's no juice on either side. So you can really take advantage of like rushing touchdown props where you get a Jonathan Taylor who's minus 200 to score and you end up getting him at just a over or under a half a touchdown. A lot of sneaky ways to get good props on this. You build 1 or 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you can 10x your entry fee. The best part though, unlike traditional props, unlike traditional books where if you bet a parlay and it's a 5-leg parlay and that late night hammer you miss and you don't cover by the hook and the whole parlay is wiped. If you hit 4 of 5 on PrizePicks, you still double your money. You still make money back if you hit 3 of 5, and you can do a 4-pick power play where if you pick 4, you can 10x, but you got to hit all of them. Anyway, I digress. Here's why it's the best deal you're going to get if you haven't signed up at PrizePicks yet. Use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. Get $100 deposit bonus when you sign up. Amazing, right? Better than that, though, you get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you use the link in the description or the one Mike's about to throw in the chat right now. They'll hit you up in 24 to 48 hours, get you signed up, $90 value, free. Every single thing on the site that we have, everything, all the tools created by Alex Baker himself, #1 ranked DFS player out there. I don't even need to say anymore. You get $100, up to $100 deposit bonus and a free $90 value month of Awesemo Plus. Sign up. Plus, it's an awesome platform where you can win money and you'll enjoy playing. Check out prizepicks.com. Give me one pick, Matt, for tonight.
Okay, so the Chicago Bears absolutely decimated in the secondary, just seeing that they promoted D Virgin to the active roster. And so I think Justin Jefferson is going to be running all over this injured and now sexless Chicago Bears secondary.
I like
91.5, okay. The over. I'm taking
I see what you did there, Matt. PrizePicks.com, App Store, Google Play Store. Check it out. Use the promo code Awesemo and use the link. Get that free month as well. And hop into our premium Discord chat when you do. Be happy to show you around over there. All right, let's talk Minnesota. I mentioned that for those of you guys that are jumping in late, the Bears are down all 4 starting defensive backs. That's not great. So Justin Jefferson probably slays in a matchup like this. And Adam Thielen, I still don't know if he's going to play yet. You're going to want to have some contingency plans there. If you're rostering him and you're not playing 3 running backs, make sure Thielen is in your flex spot, because then you can swap him out for, a Montgomery or something. You don't want to be limited to only being able to swap him out for a KJ Osborne, or something like that. Give yourself a little bit of leeway in being, or even if you swap him out for a Mooney, whoever it has to be in this late slate. But yeah, they're decimated in that secondary, Matt.
Yeah, they certainly are. And Jefferson looks like a fantastic play. I don't really care what the value rankings say when you're comparing projection to salary-based expectations. Justin Jefferson has the highest probability of breaking the slate. Dalvin Cook's a great player. He's in a great spot. He had 222 yards from scrimmage against Pittsburgh's now terrible defense all of a sudden. But Justin Jefferson is in the best spot of any player on this 2-game slate. And I would add, if you think that Adam Thielen is going to play to the point where you are playing him in the flex spot, I do also think that you want to create that lineup with less money, with more money on the table, so that you wanted to have a little bit more salary flexibility if you want to move up in salary to a player if he's ruled inactive. And I don't know anything that the beat writers don't or anything like that, but if you miss practice all week and you can't make it through a Friday walkthrough, I get it. There's been 48 extra hours to sleep here and rest, but I just don't think Thielen plays tonight. I'm not building lineups with him in right now.
Credit to Thielen, though, for having a high ankle sprain and potentially only missing a week.
That is badass. That's true.
It is. It's crazy to see what he's been able to do. There's no doubt about that. Even if he doesn't make it back to the lineup, if he doesn't, how much do you like KJ Osborne?
He's okay. He's definitely going to get the snap share that makes him relevant in a 2-game slate when you're just looking for a wide receiver option. He's probably going to get around 6 to 8 targets, but if you compare current projection to current salary-based expectation, Osborne is clearly priced at the Adam Thielen is inactive level. So if Thielen is active, Osborne becomes one of the worst point per dollar plays on the entire slate. If Thielen is active, I'll take some shots at him in tournaments, but not a place I have to get, other than the fact that if I'm doing a tiebreaker between, say, a Browns receiver and Osborne, I might just stick in this game and just go with Osborne to stay in the Chicago-Minnesota matchup.
All right. I think I want to have a lot of lineups with Dalvin Cook and Jefferson. It's actually not that tough to do, Matt. I was just playing around with some stuff right now and finalizing some lineups. You can actually make this work. You might have to go with like a double tight end, and Njoku or a Cole Kmet. You might have to go with a Higgins. There are actually some cheap options here that are not out of the realm of possibility that it could work. So I want to ask you from a game theory standpoint, would you rather go Dalvin Cook with Jefferson and say Dalvin Cook and then maybe Darnell Mooney and David Montgomery, or would you rather have the two top players, assuming Thielen's out, in Jefferson, Cook, and then maybe go to a cheaper close to minimum salary guy instead of Montgomery?
Obviously, the answer matters a little bit based on how many
Large
people
field
I'm trying to beat. Large field tournament. I want the two Vikings. Give me the two Vikings.
Me too.
I like David Montgomery a lot as a player, and this example may not show it that much, but Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson could combine for 60 points here, while no other pair combines for 45. That's absolutely in the range of outcomes here, that they could just be far and away the best two-player game stack on the slate.
I know. And that's why I'm with you too, in that Thielen probably not getting on the field. Maybe he does, who knows? But I don't think he does. If that ends up being the case and he doesn't, I'm okay taking shots, especially if I have Justin Fields and he has that rushing upside. I don't even care if I just pair him with Kmet. I don't need dual pass catchers to stack with Fields in a spot like this. If he ends up running for his life, and scrambling for 100 yards, that's like you said, passing yards or whatever. How many passing touchdowns do we expect out of him today? If I can get Fields and get, 10 points or 8 points in rushing upside, you can deal with everything else. So I think it's a viable spot. I really do. What are you doing with the rest of Minnesota? Do we even need to talk about Dalvin Cook? Honestly,
it's not a very interesting analysis. He's really, really good. He's in a great spot. This defense for the Bears is 28th in PFF's team defensive grades. Once he gets into the secondary, if he's able to burst through the hole, there's nobody who's going to be able to tackle him. He's in the optimal lineup. I can't believe this number. 80.9% of the time on DraftKings. His positive leverage score is as high as a positive leverage score can be, especially for a chalk player already. We see 61% projected ownership on DraftKings as not just too low, but way too low.
It is absolutely too low. So for me, I probably don't get to a lot of Tyler Conklin. I don't have an issue with Conklin, and I think he's fine on a 2-game slate. And I don't mean to repeat myself, but if Tyler Conklin ends up being in the winning lineup tonight in large field tournaments, you're not going to go, oh my God, how did that happen? You're going to look at it and say, okay, makes sense. He's just not a top option for me. And according to ownership, he's exactly where I am, middle of the pack for Conklin. Same with KJ Osborne, but I do believe that we have Thielen projected in right now. That can change a lot. Aside from that, if Thielen plays, I actually think he's a sneaky tournament option, because let's say he got out there and he's not limited, and you've got Chicago with all of these DBs out. Thielen is a monster when it comes to catching multiple touchdowns in a game. We've seen him do that many occasions over the past several years. If ownership is going to be, I think there will be tepid interest in Thielen. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think he's going to be as high owned as he would be, Matt, in the event that he was healthy going into this game. If he was healthy going into this game at this price, you're getting like 60% ownership on Adam Thielen.
That's a really good call. And Thielen could absolutely have one of these 6 or 7 targets. 3 of them are in the end zone. He catches 2 touchdowns. He outscores Justin Jefferson, even though Jefferson had 12 targets, happened to catch, 6 or 7. and not have a touchdown himself. That's absolutely in the range of outcomes for Thielen. We've got to mention that Tyler Conklin is at a 3,900 salary, which is actually the most of any tight end, meaning he's kind of in a salary range that's more appropriate.
4,200.
4,200. That's more appropriate if, that's right, yeah. If Thielen is out, that's really what I'm seeing. If Thielen is out, then we can start to look there. To be honest, I'm probably not going to get to a lot of them, just because if one of Osborne or Conklin hit, the way Osborne gets there, his tippy top ceiling score is a little bit higher than Conklin, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And I want to say one more thing, guys. I know we have 14 minutes left. We'll get you everything you need. We're going to go to speed through this next spot. We got almost 2,000 people watching. I love having you guys with us. Middle of the afternoon for a Monday game. Can't beat it. But please, if you're hand building lineups, make sure that your flex plays, if possible, are from the late game. If possible, right? If you have that, if you're able to configure it that way, because you're going to have, we've had so much news. We've had so much shit happening in the past past 1+ weeks with Omicron and all of this other stuff that just give yourself that out in case there's a late addition or something happens or a guy falls ill prior to game time. Because remember, it's still 3.5 hours away from that last game. Make sure that those late game players are in the flex if possible. All right. And if you can, just make it the most expensive player so you have a lot of wiggle room in the event that something happens. Anyway, Matt, let's talk about the Chicago side of the ball. I think Fields is actually at a very good price. Someone was laughing in chat earlier saying that, a rookie in a primetime game, that's crazy. Why? Well, apparently he didn't watch the last one because he was perfectly fine in that last primetime game. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Pittsburgh game was, maybe it wasn't. Was Pittsburgh Chicago primetime?
It was. I believe it was Monday Night Football, and that was his best passing game of his young career so far.
Yeah, and at that price, 19 DraftKings points is fine. Against San Francisco, he had 29 DraftKings points and then 21.5 last game. He's been rushing a lot more lately. If you told me at 5,300 I could get 21 from Fields today, but it meant I get Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, and Justin Jefferson, you can sign me up for that.
Yeah, honestly, that'll work. And the big thing with Justin Fields is, as a passer, from an efficiency standpoint, remember we just talked about how yardage is overrated for quarterbacks. It's all about efficiency. Well, from an efficiency standpoint, he's got a lot of work to do. He's outside the top 30 quarterbacks in true passer rating, total QBR, expected points added, all those fancy advanced metrics, and he's 31st among all quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. Not a great start to his career. However, the big thing is that we've seen the rushing upside really tick up recently. He's had over 70 yards rushing in 2 of his last 4 games and over 45 yards rushing in 3 of his last 4 games. So that's how he gets there. In my opinion, the best way to play Fields is only skinny stacking him, or really just playing those great Vikings on the other side that we're talking about, because the way he hits his ceiling score, in my opinion, is by getting there with his legs. I don't think there's a lot of scenarios, if he played this slate over and over again, as mediocre as Minnesota's secondary is as well, where you get Fields throwing for 3 or 4 touchdowns. I don't think that's very likely at all.
How much do you like Montgomery?
I actually like him a whole lot. I think Montgomery is a really, really solid bet. And the big thing that I noticed is that you'd have concern that if Minnesota gets ahead in this game, they are almost touchdown favorites right now in this spot, then do they just move away from David Montgomery? Do they use him in the passing game enough? And what I'm really seeing is over the last 2 weeks, Montgomery has 16 targets. And I went back and checked. He has never had more than 16 targets in a 2-week span in his entire career. So that bodes very, very well for the worst possible game script, where Jefferson smashes, Cook smashes, and Chicago is in the same situation that Pittsburgh found themselves against Minnesota last week. It could very well happen. I'm just more excited about Montgomery because he can get there, obviously, as a rusher. But if he gets 7 or 8 targets again, that's fantastic. He's already in the optimal lineup 53.5% of the time as it is.
I like him a lot. If this game stays competitive, Montgomery's getting another 20 touches. Yeah,
Right.
I'm very high on him. I have a decent amount of lineups that have Cook, that have Chubb, and David Montgomery in them for sure. And I think it was Anthony earlier said that Fields takes away from Montgomery. Yes, his rushing upside can certainly impact that, but you look at a lot of these teams like the Eagles, even if you're seeing with good rushing quarterbacks, it can open things up, and it really isn't going to cripple these guys in terms of overall opportunity, especially given that you're not seeing Khalil Herbert or Williams get really any substantial work behind Montgomery, and he has 16 targets over his last 2 games. So I don't mind pairing Montgomery with Justin Fields either. I really don't. Montgomery's a decent enough pass catcher. I'm not saying he's Terry Cohen, but yeah, he's a decent enough pass catcher in this offense to be serviceable there as well. So that's one spot I'm definitely going to be getting to a lot.
I agree with you. And from a theory standpoint, I generally agree there too, especially with rushing quarterbacks boosting their running back a little bit more than might be, expected. But over the course of this season, the correlation between Justin Fields scores and David Montgomery scores is like a negative 0.48. That's a super, super negative correlation for fantasy football. Maybe the usage has changed, and that's why we're talking about why we're more bullish than we expected to be on Montgomery. But just looking at the season-long trends, you would say, you probably don't want to get to Fields and Montgomery.
Okay, fair enough. Last 2 weeks. So that's the thing. It's what are we looking at? Is it the last 2 weeks or is it on the season? If it's the season, you're definitely right. If it's the last 2 weeks, that's a lot of targets. So
unignorable amount of targets for sure.
What are we doing with the pass? I hate the passing game here. I don't mind Cole Kmet. I just don't feel good about going to 2 pass catchers here because the volume's so spread out. Even with Robinson out on the COVID list, Mooney was much more appealing with Andy Dalton. I don't think there's any denying that. You got Damiere Byrd, you got Jakeem Grant. I like Cole Kmet a decent amount because he's so cheap. But how do you tackle these pass catchers for Chicago?
Yeah, as we said, we're probably sticking to one of these pass catchers. But honestly, I have a ton of these guys, and I don't really care which one, but I really like these players as one-offs. You saw last week the way that Jakeem Grant can break open a game with just one move at his speed. If you want to double dip him with the Bears defense and special teams, see if you can get another special teams touchdown and get double the points for that. That's not a bad play. Damiere Byrd has quietly had more opportunity than Darnell Mooney over the last 4 weeks here. Not to say that continues for sure, but that's the kind of play against a Vikings defense that ranks second worst in the NFL in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing offenses. The one problem I have with Kmet, his projection looks great. Projection compared to salary makes him look like a value. Really, really solid there. Jimmy Graham is still leading this team in red zone targets over the last 6 weeks. They clearly have designed plays once they get inside the opponent's 20 for Jimmy Graham, which takes away from Cole Kmet's ceiling. Not to say he can't get there on a 2-game slate. Of course he can. But it's just annoying. Jimmy Graham is definitely still getting utilized. Even if he has like a 30% snap share, it's where he's getting utilized that hurts you the most. You need touchdowns from tight ends.
You're right. And it's crazy too, because the guy he's running like 4 routes a game.
Right. It's like the old people were talking about him last year more so than this year as like a best ball option. It's like, well, he never gets any yak. He just falls down wherever he catches the ball. Well, if where he falls down is the end zone, like, it's fine. That works.
Right. Exactly. All right, Matt, anything else for Chicago before we hit on our top props and send everybody on our way to win some money tonight?
I didn't mention him, but you can play Darnell Mooney. Obviously, he's in the optimal lineup 37% of the time. He's led the NFL in target share in 2 weeks this season, but you said it. He's better, in my opinion, with Andy Dalton than Justin Fields.
Alex, thanks for the super chat, man. It's a member for 10 months. Damn, we've been doing this for almost a year with these with the members. We should have been doing this for a while. How weird do you need to get on a 2-gamer? He said, you can get different without being stupid weird, right? Like you don't have to go full out, I don't think at least, full out showdown mode where you're targeting a guy that is playing on 3% of snaps, and might get a target. You don't have to go with the guys like Burton from the other night in that Kansas City game. I don't think you do. I still think having that extra game makes a big difference.
I think 2 games is very different than 1. I will say, in a similar vein to showdowns or single game slates, everyone is viable. Everyone with, say, a 20% snap share and higher is viable. But super low, like under one projected fantasy point plays are really for the absolute largest field tournaments only. And ultimately here, I think if you just strategically fade one or two of the top options, you can be chalky pretty much everywhere else.
All right. So Matt, over at Odd Shopper, this is what's great. I get a show coming up. We have the slate about the lock, and there's this. It's tough to research. I already told you, been feeling awful today. Sometimes you just can't get in all the research. So why not use the best projections out there, which are entirely free, where you have expected win rate, expected ROI. You have 2 clicks to get the best bet wherever it is, whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, BetMGM. It all gives you that right there entirely for free. Wonderful thing. So I went over to Odd Shopper. Here's my top prop. Tail me on this. Let's have some fun together, fellas and ladies, of course. I'm going David Montgomery over rushing yards. I'm going over 55.5 rushing yards. We haven't projected considerably higher than that. I have zero faith ever in this Vikings defense, particularly the run defense, to be stellar or stout, call it whatever you want. At this rate, they are just not good. They consistently give up big games to players across the board. They can't run away from teams either. Even last week, we saw Pittsburgh come back. We don't want that situation where Pittsburgh is coming back in the fourth quarter because you abandoned the run. But if there's a team that's involved in more one-score games than anyone out there, other than the Lions maybe, outside of yesterday, it's the Minnesota Vikings. So it seems like a pretty damn good spot for Montgomery. I get their secondaries banged up, but still, Vikings have not taken advantage of good opportunities in the past. Give me the over on 55.5 rushing yards for Montgomery. What do you have today?
Okay, this is rare for me. You know how much I appreciate the player props tool, and I'm always sorting by expected ROI and expected win rate, and I know what the tools say, but I am going to bet on rational coaching here and say that Nick Chubb gets more than the 1.8 projected receptions that we have him for, and more than the 2.5 receptions that he has as a prop line. I'm going over 2.5 receptions for Nick Chubb.
Okay, I love it. I love it. We've got 1, 2, 3. Got a lot of. Where's the rushing yards prop for Chubb?
I believe it's 80.5. Let me check.
Yeah, we haven't projected at 96.3, 26% expected ROI, 66% expected win rate.
That's the less spicy bet.
Yeah. I've been messing with our parlay builder a lot lately too. I went with the party prop one yesterday, like plus 1,400 odds, nailed AJ Dillon under rushing yards, nailed Deebo Samuel over receiving yards. And I had, just to complete this, it was a 4-leg. To complete it, I needed Cortland Sutton over 29.5 receiving yards. This guy had maybe 6 targets, 15 plus yards downfield. Could not connect. So tilting, man.
He's running wind sprints at this point.
It's sad.
Cortland Sutton.
It's sad, but I'm going back to the well because we got the one today plus 1,900 odds, expected ROI 300. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. Give me the Justin Fields over completions. We got a little basketball mixed in there as well. I'm going to hit that as well. Dude, our parlay builder is so sick. And Dave DeRemer has been tweeting us every day, just nailing these props, nailing these parlays. I had a big one the other day as well. Just following along with this parlay builder saves you a ton of time and it's super sexy, man. So anyway, Matt, final thoughts for today. Give me your predictions on both games.
All right. I think you get a 20-10 kind of game out of Las Vegas versus Cleveland. I think Las Vegas takes this one because ultimately Nick Mullins isn't going to be able to move the ball. The one I'm going to take the over here on this Chicago-Minnesota game. I'm saying that you should be stacking this game up and focusing on these players more so than the other one. I think it's going to be something like 30-25 in favor of the Vikings by the end of this one.
Okay. Yeah, give me Cleveland 17-14.
Ooh.
And yeah, Vikings 31-24. But again, one score game. Give me one score game. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Generous for the Bears.
What's that?
31's generous for the Bears. That means they did well.
I'm saying,
or 24.
I think the Vikings score 31.
Gotcha.
What's the hold on, before you guys go, what's this giveaway? What is it? Okay, Odd Shopper giveaway. Free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for 5 different people. What is that giveaway, Matt? Mike, before we go, do you know what the actual giveaway is? No. Oh, I guess you just enter. I don't know. We got to go anyway. Thanks for. Oh, I forgot we had deeper dive. We'll see you guys back here soon. Peace.